Hi, I'm Simon Parsons, dentolegal consultant at Dental Protection. Welcome to RiskBites, a series of podcasts created specifically for dental practitioners in Australia. RiskBites looks at the key dentolegal risks and issues affecting dental practitioners right across Australia and provides helpful advice and guidance on how to steer clear of them, leaving you free to provide safe and high-quality dental care for your patients. Now, advertising clinical procedures can be a minefield, largely due to the rapid adoption of social media by many and the unintended consequences that have arisen from this. Today, I'm talking with my colleague and friend and fellow dentolegal consultant, Dr Kiran Keshwara, about the Ahpra guidelines for advertising a regulated health service. It's important to note that this guidance will be supplemented with the guidance for registered health practitioners who perform and who advertise non-surgical cosmetic procedures, which will be the discussion of another podcast. So Kiran, let's dive right into this guidance. How did it come about?
Sure, Simon. In December 2020, Ahpra released their guidance on advertising in a 25-page document titled Guidelines for Advertising a Regulated Health Service, and I wanted to spend our time today summarising the document from the perspective of both dental practice owners as well as dental practitioners.
Well, that's brilliant, as it's that far-reaching, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is, because all entities advertising a regulated health service have to ensure that their advertising complies with the health practitioner regulation national law, in other words, the national law, and other legislation that's relevant to them. Now, Section 133 of the national law legislates that advertising should not be false, misleading or deceptive, shouldn't offer gifts or discounts to attract a person to use the service unless the advert states the terms and conditions of the offer, shouldn't use testimonials about the service, shouldn't create an unreasonable expectation of the benefits of treatment, or encourage the unnecessary use of health services. Now, for dental practitioners, adherence to these guidelines is critical, not only to avoid regulatory penalties, but also to maintain public trust.
So Kiran, who actually counts as an advertiser?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Simon, because ultimately an advertiser is anyone, whether it's an individual who's a registered health professional or not. It could be a business, it could be a corporate entity. Anyone basically who advertises a regulated health service would be deemed to be an advertiser. They are the ones that publish the content themselves or authorize it to be published by a third party, whether that's a member of staff or a marketing agency, and they're deemed to be responsible for their advertising. In the dental setting, more likely than not, the advertiser will be the owner of the dental practice, as they will usually have control of the branding, the name of the practice, the website, and so on, including social media accounts.
Okay. So as well as setting out the guidance, this document, as I understand it, also sets out the not insurmountable penalties, doesn't it? So our listeners will, I guess, want to know, what are these penalties?
Yeah, and I think it's really important that they do know what the penalties are, because the penalties for being found in breach of the advertising guidelines can be quite significant. For an individual, the maximum financial penalty per offence has increased in 2022 from $5,000 to $60,000. And for a corporate body, the maximum financial penalty has increased from $10,000 to $120,000. Wow. So it's a lot of money. And further to this, if the advertiser is a registered health professional, the national law also allows for their conduct to be investigated, conditions to be imposed on their registration, and disciplinary action to be taken, possibly with prosecution as well.
So it really sounds like that in terms of the advertising issue, that it's something that Ahpra is really taking seriously, isn't it?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's additional guidance coming through soon as well, which obviously we're going to be talking about later.
Yeah. So in that case, so that they don't get caught out and get hit with $60,000 or up to $120,000 worth of penalties, what are the responsibilities for advertisers?
Ultimately, you as the clinician or advertiser have to remember that you bear the responsibility for ensuring that all advertising under your business complies with Ahpra's guidelines. This includes advertisements in print, online, on social media, and we've discussed non-compliance can result in significant consequences, including fines, but possibly more importantly, reputational damage as well.
Yeah. So you've sort of told us what they mustn't be. I guess it would be really helpful if we look at, well, what do we need to focus on to get it right? So what are some of those key considerations then, Kiran?
I think first and foremost really is accuracy and truthfulness. Advertising must not contain any false, misleading or deceptive statements. You should offer your services based on their individual merits and be honest about them, because ultimately advertising can be deemed to be false, misleading or deceptive if it misleads or omits important information, uses information that's inaccurate or biased, makes unsupported statements about treatment, or minimizes or underrepresents the risks or potential risks associated with treatment.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a minefield, doesn't it? So I think it's important then that we emphasise here, Kiran, that any claims that we make about our services or procedures or even the outcomes that they may produce must be substantiated by some sort of credible evidence. For example, offering a pain-free procedure requires robust evidence to support such a claim.
Yeah, agreed. And that leads on to the next consideration, which is the avoidance of unreasonable expectations. So advertisements must not create unrealistic expectations of success or recovery time. This includes avoiding phrases like guaranteed results or giving before and after images that might imply a guaranteed outcome or can create an unreasonable expectation of a successful outcome. We need to ensure disclaimers accompany any testimonials or images to clarify that, individual results may vary. And if before and after images are used, it's important that those images be as similar in content as possible, whether it's the lighting or the camera angle. Patients sometimes have makeup in their after pictures, and you sort of look at the patient and you're like, is this even the same patient?
Yeah.
And so really the reference treatment should be the only visible change in that person that's being photographed.
Yeah. And yet we've all seen it where it looks like they've had a full cosmetic makeover, hasn't it? It's not just their teeth anymore.
It's the hair and the makeup and everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we know that testimonials have created all manner of issues for our colleagues in the past and really got them unstuck here and there. So where do these sit now in the latest advertising guidance?
So while patient experiences are valuable, Ahpra strictly prohibits the use of testimonials in advertising a health service or treatment. Advertisers must ensure that their online presence, including social media and third-party reviews, are monitored to comply with this rule. Even unsolicited testimonials shared on platforms like Facebook or Google should not be reproduced in advertising, and comments about customer service or communication that don't reference any particular clinical treatment aren't deemed to be testimonials, so we can use that. So if, you can have a patient saying, Dr. Simon Parsons was, really calm and, made me feel very relaxed, that's okay. But, we don't necessarily want patients to be saying Simon Parsons is the go-to for XYZ treatment.
Yeah. Besides not being true in any case. Okay, no, that's good to know. So what you're telling me here, I think, is that we've really got to proceed with caution, don't we? Because we've seen in the past people where they've sort of manipulated this feedback from their patients, and it seems to have tipped them over that line and then resulted in them being found to be in breach. Is that how you see it too?
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. And another key consideration is that there should be no offers that encourage unnecessary use of services. So special promotions, discounts, or those time-limited offers, they have to be framed carefully to avoid suggesting urgency or encouraging unnecessary dental treatment. For example, language such as act now to avoid missing out would be deemed to be non-compliant, as it creates a sense of urgency and may encourage the unnecessary use of the regulated health service.
That's sort of reminding me of my last experience with Temu, actually. Where, every 5 seconds you're getting something saying...
Spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel. You've got all these extra bonus deals that you can get. But which I guess brings me to my next question or comment, which is then, do you see it that gifts or discounts would then be the same? Is that right, Kiran?
I think, they are, Simon. I think they sort of fall within that same category. And any advertising that offers a gift or a discount in order to attract someone to use a health service, must, in very simple and understandable language, state the terms and conditions of the offer. So offering something for free and then charging for treatment associated with it could be misleading and can lead to complaints. We've seen a few times, patients have been to a dentist for a free checkup, but then they charge for the x-rays and the OPGs and the study models and everything else. Naturally, the patient's going to be a bit annoyed about that, and that will lead to a complaint.
Yeah, and I guess you can't really do a thorough checkup without some of those extra investigations. It's not going to be a proper one otherwise. Yeah. Okay. So what you're really telling me here is that there really should always be a very clear disclosure of all the fees and terms.
Yeah, there should. And any advertising related to costs must be transparent. If you advertise a discount or a package deal, you need to provide clear terms and conditions to avoid misleading your patients.
Okay. Now, some of our colleagues out there listening to us might be thinking, well, I should really get the practice to check this, because maybe they're thinking that it's not really compliant after all. So, but it's not all on the practice though, is it, Kiran?
No, not completely, no. Whilst usually the practice owners hold the ultimate responsibility, other dental employees or contractors using those premises, and by implication associated with the advertising, also have obligations to ensure that their personal and professional advertising adheres to Ahpra standards. This includes, again, social media posts and profiles where employees promote their services. Now, dental contractors or employees often use platforms like Instagram or LinkedIn to promote their expertise, and they must ensure that their posts also align with Ahpra's guidelines. We need to avoid exaggerated claims about skills or outcomes or procedures. For example, describing yourself as the best cosmetic dentist in Sydney would be considered a breach of the guidelines. And you should really work closely with the practice owners to ensure that their messaging aligns with the business's overall advertising compliance. For example, we need to make sure that staff profiles on practice websites or promotional materials are factual, evidence-based, and free of, so-called promotional exaggerations.
Okay, so there's sort of a two-way street here, isn't there? On the one hand, everything you're saying there is that the practice is responsible, but on the other hand, each clinician working at the practice is equally responsible for that accuracy and transparency and not making exaggerated claims.
Correct, so, because if, sometimes practice owners aren't necessarily registered clinicians as well, and Ahpra may not be able to investigate them, but as a clinician, they'll definitely be able to investigate you.
Okay, so you wouldn't be able to say, well, they're on a service and facility agreement. It's their practice that's being run at that overall practice, therefore it's just on the practitioner.
No, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
And I think also if a patient leaves positive feedback on your social media page, it shouldn't be shared or endorsed in any of your personal advertising content as well. You should avoid sharing or engaging with testimonials that could be construed as advertising.
Okay. I guess that brings us to another area that has caused a lot of heartache for some of our colleagues, and it relates to their use of a protected title. So by way of explanation, there is a recognised list of specialties, and to use that title, you need to actually be registered with Ahpra under that specialty, don't you?
Yeah, that's correct. A person who doesn't have the relevant registration shouldn't use the protected title, nor should they claim themselves to be a specialist in a certain aspect of dentistry if they're not registered as a specialist in Australia. Any advertising that uses the words such as specialist, specialises in, specialty, could be considered to be misleading or deceptive and shouldn't be used unless obviously truthful. Alternative wording could be considered something like has significant experience in, or has an interest in, or works primarily in. Those would be considered to be less misleading. And for avoidance of doubt, in Australia, there are some titles associated with dentistry that are protective. So these are dentist, dental therapist, dental hygienist, dental prosthetist, and of course, oral health therapists as well.
So I guess if you use any of those titles that are well understood and you don't use something different to that, you should be okay.
You should be okay, yeah. Ultimately, you don't want to be advertising yourself to be a specialist or specialising in a certain aspect of dentistry if you don't have the registration for it.
Because we've certainly seen that with our members, haven't we? We've seen people who say, Dr Keshwara, not that this has been the case, but Dr Keshwara specialises in orthodontics. Yeah. And yet you're not a specialist.
That's not true. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So we'll put the list of dental specialties and titles in the episode notes, Kiran, but I do also want to emphasise that there is something broader here than just dental, isn't there? Like for someone to use the title acupuncturist, that's actually a protected title.
Yeah.
So unless you were registered also with the Chinese Board of Medicine as an acupuncturist, you wouldn't be able to use that title to advertise that you perform dentistry and provide acupuncture. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you have a recent case example about the use of a protected title that you can share with us then?
Definitely. Yeah, so I had, we worked with a GDP who had significant experience and postgraduate training in orthodontics. And he was referred to in the practice website as an orthodontist. And they were ultimately contacted by Ahpra's advertising compliance team because a complaint had been made about their use of a specialist title in their website. The member contacted us and we assisted them with reviewing their website and the general messaging about the services that they offered and the use of the title orthodontist, which could be, and I'd argue is misleading to patients as they may consider that the dentist is a specialist in Australia. And upon reviewing their advertising, the member made changes to their website and removed any mention of the word orthodontist, while also including some more information about the experience and the training that they had.
And was that it then? Overall?
Yeah. So we helped the members submit their changes and inform Ahpra of the changes that they'd made. And Ahpra accepted these changes and therefore there were no penalties laid on our member.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, sometimes we come across our members' interactions with Ahpra and it almost seems that if Ahpra are unconvinced about your intent, they may assume the worst. But here...
I think sometimes it's useful to just get a fresh pair of eyes on your website or on your advertising as such, because then we can actually talk through, where you could be deemed to be in breach.
Okay. All right. Now, you also had another recent matter where there was an allegation of misleading content or advertising as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think I'd sort of briefly touched on this. So there was a practice which offered a free consultation for aesthetic treatment. Now, when patients booked in for their free consultation, they were then charged for x-rays, vitality testing, study models, photographs. And this resulted in the patient making a complaint to Ahpra, who then investigated the practice owner. The practice owner disputed the complaint and said that the free consultation was, in fact, correct. The patient wasn't charged an 011, an 012, or an 014. But Ahpra were of the opinion that a free consultation would be deemed by the general public, who doesn't really understand the nuances of dental codes and charges, to suggest that the entire appointment would be at no cost, rather than only the consultation part of the appointment. And ultimately, the practice owner accepted this and made the appropriate changes to their advertising.
Yeah, I guess it sort of brings to mind then that we've got a couple of options. We can seek advice from our peers to say, does this look right? Is this what you understand from the advertising guidelines? But there's probably some room there to get a lay person to look at our websites and our other advertising pamphlets, whatever, and say, what do you understand from the messaging here? What are you taking away? Because ultimately they're going to be the sort of arbiters of whether they understood it correctly. And if they don't, that's where we set ourselves up to get a complaint, isn't it?
True.
Okay. Well, I had a case where advertising created actually a different concern, and it was the unnecessary use of health services with all orthodontic assessment patients actually getting free radiographs. And I can understand why they might want to take radiographs to assess someone for orthodontics, but a patient actually attended with some recent films, or at least copies of images, and required referral to a specialist for some complex multidisciplinary care. And the dentist declined in that instance to take a free OPG and lateral ceph, okay, since the patient already had some with them. And I think the dentist rightly at that time believed that they were necessary as part of that overall treatment. But the patient actually reported the dentist for a breach of advertising. Now, in that case, Ahpra weren't worried about the dentist's assessment and referral because that sounds like there was evidence that they knew what they were trying to do. Yeah. Nor their actual refusal then to take another set of images and irradiate the patient another time. But they were concerned about the way their practice was actually advertising how it would be done. So I guess with that in mind, do you have any final comments about this whole issue then, Kiran?
Yeah, look, I think Ahpra's advertising guidelines are ultimately designed to protect public trust in us and to ensure ethical communication in healthcare and to assist us as dental practitioners. Ahpra's provided further information and resources about the advertising guidelines and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in their advertising hub, which again we'll link in the episode notes. Now, alongside Ahpra's regulations on advertising, practitioners also need to be aware of advertising regulations administered by other authorities such as the ACCC and the TGA, who regulate advertising in relation to therapeutic goods, and of course the new guidelines which we mentioned earlier, Simon. Now, for all dental professionals, understanding and adhering to these rules is crucial to maintain our professional integrity and to avoid regulatory pitfalls. And by ensuring that you review all of your messaging to the general public, and I think, Simon, it's a really good idea to, as you suggested, get a layperson to have a look at the wordings on your website or on your advertising. And we want to just make sure that we're complying with the advertising guidelines. You can safeguard your reputation and focus on delivering quality dental care to your patients.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah. Look, thank you so much, Kiran, and thank you to all of you for listening to us. And we do hope that this podcast was helpful to you, and we look forward to sharing more guidance with you in the future. Now, if you like Dental Protection Podcasts and would like to hear more, please subscribe and leave us a review.